we need to bring some of the spice back, and it not in that we just talked about conception a bit ago, so that was a terrible word choice.
I think if you only obey things that you understand, then you're not obeying anything. You're just agreeing. Russia's liturgical calendar looks something like this from about October to May is freeze your butt off months. Then they have a month of sick your dogs on the American missionaries. That's that month, right? That's June. Okay. And then they have July and August and September are like bomb some neighboring country. So they stick to those liturgical periods in their calendar, and it's enriching. It's beautiful.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so my question still remains. What are we talking about?
This is gonna be the best day ever. This is gonna be the best day ever. Wake up.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to Ward Radio. I am your host, Cardon Ellis. Today I'm joined in the studio by Connor Boyack, as well as via Zoom by none other than the Associate Professor of All Things Apocryphal, Jonah Barnes, as well as Luke Hanson, writer from the Cougar Chronicle, who has a thesis he is going to defend today that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints needs a liturgical calendar. And if you disagree with us, you are a bad person. Here to explain, okay, maybe not that part.
What if you don't know what a liturgical calendar is?
Yeah.
Then you're a bad person.
Then you're a bad person. All right. So Luke, defend your thesis why the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints needs a liturgical calendar. You have the floor, my man. Go.
Well, Connor brings up a very good question of what is a liturgical calendar? Not unlike the question, what is a woman, by a very prominent Catholic. So we do need to answer this question. And I actually think Jonah, having experienced was it the Orthodox Church over in Russia?
Yes, the Russian Orthodox Church. Yeah, Eastern Orthodoxy.
So you were kind of around this in the culture. Like, what does liturgical calendar look like in practice?
In practice, so the liturgical calendar, the Russian Orthodox Church has like a set of, they're like feasts or like periods of the year that are divided up. So like in America, the closest thing that you might be familiar with is like Lent. You know, like all your Catholic friends are doing Lent certain time of year.
Yeah,
like,
rock on.
You know, and they'll have Mardi Gras right before Lent to like sin as much as they can.
Yeah,
like unironically, and then they do Lent to like fast and repent or whatever. So liturgical calendars just have a bunch of feasts laid out all throughout the year, periods of, there will be, this month will be, the month of sorrow, and this month will be the month of having babies, and this month will be the month of whatever. And they kind of divide up the year. Russia's liturgical calendar looks something like this from about October to May is freeze your butt off months. Then they have a month of sick your dogs on the American missionaries. That's that month, right? That's June. Okay. And then they have July and August and September are like bomb some neighboring country. So they stick to those liturgical periods in their calendar, and it's enriching. It's beautiful.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
my question still remains. What are we talking about?
Okay. So Lent is probably something that people in the United States will be the most familiar with. Starting on Ash Wednesday, you do like an ash cross on your head, and then you abstain. You do like a period of fasting, not from food. Ramadan actually does that, and I guess you could call theirs a liturgical calendar as well, even though they probably wouldn't say that. But you pick something. I was actually at a student event a couple of days ago at a university, and the guys in front of me were all Catholic, and they were sharing amongst each other, what did you give up? So one guy had given up Twitter, another guy had given up alcohol. I forget I think the other guy gave up like his phone after 9 p.m. or something like that to like go to bed with. So it's the way we do fasting, but it's connected to a certain time of year. And if you've heard the song, The 12 Days of Christmas, this is referring to the Catholics. For them, it's not just Christmas. There's a period before, and then there's a period after. And Christmas actually starts like the Easter season, essentially. So if you go to Catholic Mass between Easter and Christmas, you'll hear readings and they'll say that we are in ordinary time now. We're just in
Ordinary
normal
time.
time. And then when
Yep.
we enter the days of Christmas, we're now in the days of Christmas, and the services, the liturgy, that's kind of the process of what happens during a church service, changes. And actually the priests have like different color clothes depending on what time of year we're in.
Dude, rock
And so
on.
you follow the calendar around in observing different things. And then like every saint, it's like almost every day is a different feast day. And obviously Catholics aren't having a celebration every single day, but there will be certain ones that are higher than others. And it's just the way we have the week. Like we work generally Monday through Friday. Sunday's supposed to be reserved as a sacred time. Within that, the sacrament is the most sacred time. But they kind of take the whole year, and the whole calendar has this arc that it follows. And so I'm a big fan of more of the mysterious. I'm a fan of this concept called high church as opposed to low church. And I actually stuck a couple of examples in the Discord of that. So not the video, but
I just like to say,
Yeah.
I still think my explanation was better than Luke's.
You have like those real world examples, Jonah.
Am I right, Connor? Come on.
I was actually just thinking like there's a guy in Utah that started a church all based around magic mushrooms. So when Luke says high church, that's where my mind went.
High
This might be a concept that people aren't used to. So that first picture I put in the Discord card.
Okay, I got it right here. There's the low church and the high church. Just one simple little graph right here.
Well, actually, I'm going to zoom in on those pictures. So the first two I put in the Discord are the zoomed in pictures on that spectrum that I put up there.
Okay, cool. So here's the first picture. That is, if I blow it up right here, it says Lincoln Logs Jenga and the house that never falls. Okay, and it looks like some mega church in front of an LED screen doing a super cool kind of church lesson or something.
Yeah, so this is Hello Saints. This is Pastor Jeff. It's actually his most recent video where he took a Latter-day Saint to a couple of different churches in Utah. So I actually took a still from this video because it's a perfect example of low church. It doesn't mean that they have a lower theology.
No, it's just like the people's church.
Yeah, it's not like they're the peasant church. It's
like a populist approach to it.
Yeah, so you'll see the pastor. That guy up there is the pastor. He's in a t-shirt. He's in jeans. You'll see the drummer behind the screen over there. They've got some sort of projection thing talking about Lincoln Logs, like a toy. And everything's very chill. The audience not really dressed up.
That guy in the hoodie is already on his cell phone. It's like, come on, bro. They gave you an LED wall and they got a straight up live drummer behind a clear sound barrier, and you're still got your head in your iPhone. Like, come on, bruh.
He even has his Jenga tower. He brought his Jenga tower from home.
That's what I'm saying, man.
As part of like his demonstration. So just kind of like this very chill, informal. It's actually not. They don't always take communion, or as we would call it, sacrament.
Yeah,
at these church services. So this is very low church. It's very chill, very modern, very contemporary, not a lot of ceremony, clothing, religious gestures, that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. We got it.
And then high church, everybody's probably seen this kind of stuff before.
Love it. Here's the high church. This is the good stuff, dude.
Yep. So this is the smells and bells. This is the communion procession, the crosses, the special clothes, all that kind of stuff. Now, the interesting thing about our church is we don't just have the services in sacrament meeting. We have
the mid church. There's the high church and the low church. We're constantly
so this is the graph
mid.
that I brought up. So yeah, so here's the first spectrum with only those two pictures on it.
Okay, so I got to make it small again. But yeah, here's the low church and the high church. All right, I see it.
And that's kind of a spectrum. And then in that second picture, I've put in where I see us falling onto the spectrum.
Okay, so for the people that are just listening on the radio, we've basically got the low church and the high church on opposite ends of a straight line. And now in the second graph, let's see what happens when we pull up the second graph that Luke gave us here. And this is where we fall. All right, I see what you did there, Luke.
But you notice we don't fall in one spot. We fall in two spots.
I see it, Luke. I see it.
Why in the world is that?
because we've got temple ceremonies, which you're saying are slightly above the high church with the liturgy. And then our regular Sunday session is kind of mid-church, like I said. It's right there in the middle. We've got the sacrament and we've got some opening and closing hymns. They're not cool enough to be, rocking it with homeboy and his Lincoln logs in front of the LED.
I actually
LED
thought you were
wall.
going the other direction and saying they're not cool enough that they're Gregorian chants.
Oh, yes.
Well, I would say,
Yeah.
but
Exactly. Okay. So you think we need to go with more smells and bells is what you're saying.
I think in society we're kind of missing that aspect. We see in our architecture, things have become very practical, brutalism that's unfortunately invaded Washington, D.C. in like the 1960s.
Oh.
And everything is about efficiency, everything's about economy, everything's about making sense on the surface level. And this is nothing against like your normal evangelical Protestant churches, but if you walk into this kind of assembly hall that has folding chairs set up, there's a drum kit, there's a big power projector screen, you're like, okay, I've been to concerts, I know what's going on here. And he gives a very, simple on the face lesson about how somehow the Jenga blocks relate to whatever passage of scripture that he chose in the NIV. Cool. Like nothing wrong with that. But as humans, we are very symbolic people. In fact, the words I'm saying right now are just symbols for different concepts. We don't live in the world of economics. We don't live in the world of science or engineering. We live in the world of symbols. And high church practices, like we have in our temples, are what is tapping into that aspect. And I think people miss the fact that we miss things when we try to simplify and make things as utilitarian as possible.
I'm kind of smelling what you're stepping in, Luke, which is a rarity. But no, I'm just kidding. I'm smelling what you're stepping in because I kind of see the temple ceremony as kind of having been a little bit neutered. I get that we need to truncate it for time. That's a practicality that all of us engage in the modern world. And this idea of like a 2-day temple ceremony, I'm glad that's out the door. And it shouldn't even be a 1-day deal as well. I like that we've truncated it for time, but it also seems like as we've shortened it, and decisions have been made to make it shorter, it seems like the things they've chopped out, they've assumed people understand what the shortened version is symbolic of because they would have gone through the temple before and remembered the old ways. You know what I'm saying? But they don't realize there's entire generations of people that haven't gone through the temple via the old ways, so they don't understand what the shortened, more condensed version is symbolic of.
Well, I wondered on Luke's spectrum showing where he thinks the temple is slotted.
Luke is definitely on the spectrum.
I would...
on the low end.
I would suggest that like a century ago in the temple, we could argue would be there. But I would say for some of the reasons Cardon's pointing out, some of these changes, like no longer doing actual, washing and anointings, where in the temple you used to move from room to room, which was symbolic of going from one estate to the next or one kingdom to the next.
Based.
And so we've lost a lot of these things. Maybe it's because of the efficiency measures Cardon's talking about.
No, it's because they were afraid of the feminists. That's why they're afraid of what the crazy person in the third row might scream.
I would just move over the temple, like the current temple, slightly off of that. I'll also say this, that and Luke, I'm curious, before we started recording, you theorized that you and I would have some disagreement here. I'm actually curious what you think that might be, but I will say. I don't think all symbols are useful.
You're libertarian, bro. What do you mean? Oh, we might disagree with something. Your whole entire party's job is to like walk in and when people are discussing something, say, well, actually, say a bunch of weird stats,
okay.
And then like make everybody feel stupid while you suggest some asinine fix that is worse than all of theirs. You know what I'm saying? Combined.
Rational, logical, common sense. Now,
I've seen the clips when freaking Gary, what's his name that didn't know where Aleppo was?
Gary Johnson.
Where Gary Johnson literally said, maybe it's not a bad idea to have driver's licenses. And then people started booing. Boo!
Okay, I have never been a member of the Libertarian Party. I'll get that at the outset. I espouse the libertarian philosophy, and yes, what they now call teenagers oppositional defiance disorder. That was me, and that is me. That I am by my nature a contrarian, but I do appreciate symbols. I think there is a lot of value. I agree with Luke. Our humanity is kind of wrapped up in symbolism and how we express ourselves and perceive the world that we're in. And so I'll give you an example. I was kind of not dismayed, that's strong, but I did not like last year when the church canceled the cornerstone ceremony in the temple. This is a long-standing practice that they have since moved away from, citing the brutalism perhaps that Luke is talking about, or the efficiency that Cardon is talking about. They said, look, we have these new manufacturing methods, we have these new things, there's not actually cornerstones anymore, we don't really do that.
Oh, that's lame. Make a cornerstone then, bro.
Right, and that's what they were
Which
for
is
a while.
what they've been doing.
Correct.
Yeah.
They were doing that for a very long time. But then you had, for example, at the very last cornerstone ceremony last year, this was in May, Elder Oaks was presiding there. It was in Richmond, Virginia. And at that dedication, he said this: the most important idea about a cornerstone is that Jesus Christ himself is the chief cornerstone, setting the direction for the building at the key position in the foundation. So it is with this temple. Now we've just omitted that, like so many other symbols that can direct us to Christ.
Think how many young men would go with their fathers to that cornerstone ceremony, and in the back of their mind, I went when I was 10. And now when I'm 11 or 12 and I can do baptisms for the dead, or it's like, now once I'm 18, I'm going to pull out my endowments to go on my mission or whatever, like they will have that tie to the physical place that will ultimately lead to a spiritual improvement and so on and so forth. And so much you and I talk about the crimes of omission.
Yeah.
Like we're always worried about committing a crime of commission and offending somebody, but we never take into account what all of this milquetoastness has done to cost us people having a connection with the building. Like how many people have gone astray because we haven't been strong in comparison to how many have gone astray because they got offended, AKA would have probably left anyway. All right. So I look at that and I think getting rid of the cornerstone ceremony, you completely predicted the inactivity of another 3% of your youth just by not doing that. So congratulations, bruh, whoever planned that one.
So Russell M. Nelson actually gave a talk about this very thing, and I wish we would reference this talk more. It was called Spiritual Drift. Where is that? Combating Spiritual Drift, and he re-gave it. It was a long time ago. I think 93. Combating Spiritual Drift, Our Global Pandemic.
Oh,
that's
Whoa.
not at all a controversial thing to bring up with Connor Boyack.
At the 1993 Parliament of the World's Religions in Chicago. So this wasn't a general conference thing.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes. And it's wonderful. And it's just talking about how those small incremental, just water dripping on a stone. It doesn't offend anyone. It doesn't seem to be hurting anybody, but over the years, it slowly just wears away the soul. And you can always look at the big things, and government does this a lot. These big flashy projects, if we just take a penny from everybody, and it's like, well, how many pennies are you going to take? After a while starts to make a difference. And these small things, if we're taking the meat and the spiritual depth out of symbols, are going to start to have kind of a detrimental effect on our spirituality, I think is kind of how that applies.
So
but actually,
this goes, sorry.
Well, I was going to say, in the Discord, we have a liturgical calendar example that everybody can see. This liturgical calendar, I think this is the Catholic liturgical calendar that I threw in here, and Cardon can pull that up so you can see kind of what it looks like. I'm pulling it up right
now. Yes, right here. Boom.
And I think you need to get that in your heads, because we actually have, from church history, if you were not aware, and Connor, I'm really disappointed you didn't know this, but we actually had a LDS liturgical calendar that Joseph Smith gave us that is now in the Discord for us to look at. This is very telling. This is something that Joseph Smith actually wrote. It was 1843 in the Times and Seasons.
It doesn't have
it was published.
It doesn't have a month in it for dogs chasing missionaries or anything like that.
No, don't be silly. This is
okay.
Very
So here's the liturgical calendar.
Okay?
I just pulled it up.
Oh God.
There's Christmas and Joseph Smith birthday, February.
Yeah, that's around end of December and January. Then we move into Pink Halloween, a very near and dear holiday. Then we have March, which is BYU basketball disappointment season. Everybody wears sackcloth and ashes during March. Then we have potlucks towards the end of March. We move on to Easter. And then quickly to mission farewells season around June, July. Then as we approach BYU football disappointment season, which is the largest season in the LDS liturgical calendar, we have a small break for Moroni Day, trademark WardRadio. Then we have Orange Valentine's Day at the end of October. Then we have the Having Babies,
which is 9 months after the Pink Halloween.
Oh, you noticed that.
I was born in November, and later in life, my mother told me,
Pink Halloween.
Did she tell you also to say it on?
Why November? She's like, well, do the math. What's November minus 9 months?
Dude, bro, something I'm so glad they got rid of baby books was my buddy had in his baby book his birth date and then his conceived on date.
Ooh.
Have you ever seen those?
Awkward.
In the old baby books? Oh yeah, conceived on dates. Like, bro.
No. So I actually had a steak. I was at a steak conference in Provo in the tabernacle before it burned down and turned into a temple in the tabernacle. And there was a guy giving a talk, and it was like the end of the night, and everybody's just so because it's so hot and sweaty in there. And it was all a bunch of students, and he was giving this talk, and he's like, it was this really spiritual talk, and he's like, and then I prayed, and I just needed some help, and Lord answered my prayer because that night my daughter was conceived.
Oh, God.
And everyone's like, what did he just say? And it's full of BYU students. All these young BYU students were like,
surely he meant in vitro fertilization, right? Or something more controlled.
Anyways, but
that is not going where I thought it would.
So yeah. So I'm curious, Luke. I want to hear.
So to go back to Connor's question from 15 minutes ago.
Run from the conceived on date. Yeah. Run.
Yeah, we're done with that one. We're done with that one. So Connor asked a very astute question, and he said, I pointed out that that I probably disagree with him a little bit, and I think it is in this fact of we agree that symbols are important. But I kind of take more of the approach, and this is what G.K. Chesterton is kind of into more, of we can still keep it even if we can't understand the reason for it or explain it. And if it turns out to actually just be a silly thing that we do that isn't needed, the very fact that we are doing something all together is in and of itself a uniting thing.
Got it.
So I know that in the past, and I'm not actually.
Is this because I don't wear ties to church?
Oh, are you that guy, bro?
That could fall.
Are you that guy, bro? You are libertarian.
Yeah, but people have, Luke. I don't know if we're in the same Facebook group or whatever, but a couple of weeks ago, someone was making an argument like this using similar arguments that it has a uniting purpose, it's a respect purpose. And so for me, and I'm not saying your position is that wearing ties is, symbolism that unites us under a common banner. I can see what you're saying. The problem I have with that is that, yes, I think it is collective in nature. Hey, we're all doing this together. I'm more of an individualist and kind of a contrarian. So by nature, I kind of rub up against that. But also, I think a lot of the symbols that we do are based off of traditions of the fathers. And I'll give you a weird example. I saw this on Twitter just a couple days ago. Apparently, there is this what do they call it? An Orthodox Jewish practice where rabbis, after they do the circumcision, they will, and I'll use YouTube appropriate language here. They will put their mouth in contact with what they just did to remove the blood. And this is a very common practice in that sect of Orthodoxy or whatever. For them, it's this very ritualistic, symbolic type of thing. They've just kind of created this and given it symbols. On my mission in Honduras, we and this is common in a lot of Latin American countries that I've traveled to since and realized it's not just a local thing. You get these deacons who will pass the sacrament and they'll hold it in their right hand, and their left hand is like militaristically like glued to the back of their lower back, as if they're like holding a pose in some military march or something like that. And when I would ask them, like, why are you doing that? Oh, they had some like reason for why it was symbolic. And so that's where I worry about symbols, is like, I think when they are doctrinal, scriptural, divine, God has said, hey, celebrate this holiday or do this thing, I'm totally on board. When we kind of make it up and then ascribe meaning to it and say, oh, because we're all doing it, I think that is where we'd probably part ways.
Mm-hmm. The only thing with that is you can take that principle so far, and I think that's what Protestants do a lot of, because that's their criticism of our church. Like, why do you do this? 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 We should be focusing on Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so everybody can take we need to focus on Jesus more stance until you inadvertently end up removing Christ
I would say
your religious practices.
I would say we have defensible arguments,
but you can do it the other way
situation.
too, and you can add on so many things. Like, I'm not saying that either.
Yeah,
but we do have to find the middle ground, and you can't use either argument on either side and have it always be valid.
I think you can be defensible against the Protestants and others who criticize us for that, to the extent that we can say this is a directive from God, or we believe this because it was revelation or it was given to us. If instead it's just us kind of coming up with our own thing and saying what we like, that's where I'm kind of like, is there like a spiritual revelatory basis for what we're doing? When I was in the Boy Scouts, I don't know if you guys did this at all. I did the Order of the Arrow. Do you remember this? Did any of you do this at all?
Way back in the day, yeah.
Mm-hmm. This was like Boy Scouts plus, and I remember I went to the ceremony, where I got my little sash with the arrow or whatever. And it was this like weird Illuminati kind of thing. We were all in a circle around the fire. And there was like this adult leader who was dressed up in the big feather wig type of thing, representing some, I don't know, Native American spirit type of thing. And he was going around whispering like secret code words in people's ears. And it was this very kind of bizarre thing. I was just like, honestly, I felt like the first time I took my endowment out, and I'm just like, what is going on here, right?
You've actually hit on exactly the problem. Is if we have this mindset of everything being extremely utilitarian and able to be explained simply, you go to the temple and it's like you're being
because Kwaku is the other way. He was like, I was fully prepared to be naked. It's sad, like
you have this you have this very disorienting experience because it's that graph that I put up. The church services are kind of leaning on this side of the spectrum, and then our temples are very far over to like the full-on traditional Latin Mass side of the thing. I think it's because we've been telling ourselves that what the kind of worship that the temple is somehow the wrong way to do it, or bad, and the very simplistic,
needs an explanation.
stripped down, the very simplistic, stripped down, utilitarian, it is what it is on its face approach is the correct way to do it.
So is your position?
So I think we need to bring the mystery back, bring the magic back. Not necessarily we need to set out a liturgical calendar, but we need to bring some of the spice back. And it not in that we just talked about conception a bit ago, so that was a terrible word choice. But
the G-rated spice.
I'm going like half Kwaku. I'm doing like quarter Kwaku right now, of bringing some of the magic and the mystery and I guess the mystery is a good word, back into worship.
Luke, do you feel like our sacrament meeting on that spectrum being so far as it is, and us needing the rational explanation for purposeful behavior, do you think we're just, would it be your argument that our church is kind of going along with society? Because I think of like, the Masons, the Kiwanis Club, the Rotary, the fraternal organizations that, at least in America, I don't know on a global stage what this was like, America was full of these type of fraternal societies that had very kind of a lot of symbolism, a lot of ritualistic ceremonies and practices. And it was especially the Masons, but there were so many offshoots and other ones as well. Our society has become much more like postmodern, the brutalism that you talked about in architecture. Do you just feel that our church has kind of gone swept along with those social currents, and how we as a people have kind of rejected that ceremonial fluff, that the church is just kind of doing that, or that we as a church body are kind of getting swept along those social tides as well?
Yes, softly.
Okay.
I think you're a little more into like critiquing, or like
He's libertarian. He starts sentences with "actually."
I disagree. I object, Your Honor.
Can I input here? So I think that I love when people go through the temple for the first time, because the temple is so not like modular. You can't put it in your pocket. You could make it 18 years, 19 years through the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and feel like you've got a handle on things. You could feel like, I can fit this in my hand. I can hold this in my fanny pack, right? For people like Cardon, who wear fanny packs everywhere. I can fit this in my fanny pack.
I am unashamed.
Yeah. But when you go to the temple, all that breaks, because the temple, you cannot understand everything that goes on in the temple. And I think it's very healthy for you spiritually. I think if you only obey things that you understand, then you're not obeying anything. You're just agreeing. And I think it's the faith muscles that we exercise, sometimes symbolism that is kind of beyond us, exercises the same faith muscles. When the Lord asks us to do something difficult or hard, or a bishop says, you need to repent of this thing, and you think, you're just a man like me, those muscles of faith, those muscles of obedience get exercised sometimes when we're doing symbols that we really don't understand. For whatever reason, Jesus Christ chose water. He chose water. He said, you have to be baptized in water. And we think immersion, it's got to be immersion. Why? He just chose it. And my kids ask me this. They say, why immersion in water? Like, why is that a thing? And I have to say, Jesus chose it. And they say, why did Jesus choose it? And I have to say, I don't know. He just picked it. And there's things like that. I think to Luke's point, we set a trap for ourselves when we pretend like everything has a utilitarian explanation and we can understand everything, and it has to have a practical reason for it that we can hold in our hand. And then all of a sudden we go to the temple and it blows up our faith. It blows up our testimony because we never exercised those muscles. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, my last question before we end here is, you provided a clip that we never saw. Is this clip relevant still?
That was actually, I wanted to bring that up because I had the feeling that I would not be able to do what I was trying to convey justice. And so I brought in some ammo. I brought in a Catholic bishop, Robert Barron, on the Jordan Peterson podcast.
Okay.
To say what I'm trying to say. In better words and less words.
Okay, all right. Then we're
going to do about a minute of this. I think it starts at 16 seconds and we'll go until 16 seconds of the next minute.
Okay, awesome. So here we go. This is Eternal Truth and the Uphill Climb by Bishop Barron. Go.
Right. Well, Romano Guardini and the leaders of the liturgical movement, early 20th century, wanted to bring forward this idea of the Mass as play. The Mass is the most useless thing that we can do. And I use that language a lot. It always draws people up short. But I say, look, the Mass, which is outside of time, it's not meant to lead to anything else.
Right. It's not instrumental.
Right. And we're being drawn into precisely the dying and rising of Jesus. And so that.
Okay. Do I keep going, my man? Do I keep going?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Here we go.
That's why it's the supreme form of play. And that's why, I put on fancy vestments and I incense and I light candles and we move around in a kind of like liturgical dance, etc. Well, all of that is expressive of play.
It's meant to be. Yeah.
Right. It's a play. Who saw that very clearly was Chesterton, who was a very playful figure.
All right. So
Chesterton.
That's good about right there.
Okay. Yep. So.
Yeah. So there is an aspect of it that should be useless because it's not instrumental towards something. We live in an embodied state, and so certain gestures, certain positions, certain clothes that we wear. I actually got this from a Catholic today. Little medals that they carry around. This one is not a miraculous medal, but this one's St. Benedict. Gave it to me on campus today. But they're really good at having this concept. At Chesterton, he was Catholic. He's very good at understanding this. Bishop Barron is explaining it really good. And I think society wants that. Society needs that
craves it.
The playful, the mysterious, the exciting aspect of worship. And there's good theology behind it, because Jonah hit on this exactly right. If we approach our worship as if everything has a very simple explanation, we might start getting the idea that God is very simple to understand. And now you're on a bad theological road. So if you need a purpose to have unexplained things in your worship, there you go. If you need it to be utilitarian, that's your purpose, is to help yourself realize that it doesn't make sense sometimes.
And maybe
you are human and God is God.
And maybe Connor's point is that when we contrive them for ourselves,
yes,
it starts to get a little weird, like when we're kind of like making up things.
Then you turn into BYU Idaho students who feel that they're more righteous because they don't wear shorts, right? And it's like, oh, because we're covering more of our flesh and being more like holy and whatever. That's where I get a bit like, you're kind of making this up and then like assigning to it some type of value that doesn't exist. If we're talking about stuff from God, stuff that's divine, revealed, doctrinal, all that kind of stuff, I am totally on board with you guys, because it has inherent meaning. God has signaled that like there is, a principle here. There is a symbol here. I taught you this parable. There are layers of symbolism to unpack. 100% I'm with you. But when the stake president says, hey, all you bishops need to be clean shaven, or mission presidents like have they're like, you can listen to this music, but not this music. But if it's instrumental, but then if it's like a score of a epic music, like, when we make up these rules, that's when I'm kind of like, that's that. So, but I concede to Luke's point that spectrum or that pendulum, like how to like cut that line and say, this is good, this is bad. That's really murky.
Yeah. Connor wears a Speedo to the studio just to stick it to the man. Just to show. He just
emphasis on the stick,
out, Connor. He's that righteous.
It is symbolic for me.
No, it's brutal. I think the best place to start is obviously Jonah Barnes' liturgical calendar, and as we can see right here, we're exiting BYU basketball disappointment season, going into the potluck season right before Easter, the day of Pentecost, and the season of mission farewells. So, anyway, ladies and gentlemen. Let us know where you think we go wrong. Let us know where you think we go right. Let us know how much truth or untruth is in this liturgical calendar. And also, who's your favorite between Luke Hanson, Connor Boyack, and Jonah Barnes as guests on this episode?
And if, like me, you are a November baby, go talk to your parents and ask about your date of conception.
Oh, savage. I just threw up in my mouth just a little bit. Just a little bit. So anyway, yes, let us know where you go wrong. Keep the conversation going in the comments below. And as always, for this and more, please check us out at WardRadio.com.
This is gonna be the best day ever. This is gonna be the best day ever. Wake up, top of the morning. The bacon is crispy, the coffee is pouring. My meditation is peeling an orange. The bank says I'm already scoring.